Hi everyone, welcome to WW Designs. My name is Nikki, and hands up if you have some old magazines lying around the place, you've cut out all the images that you like, maybe some words, some letters, and you've got all the leftover bits, lots of text, stuff like that, and you're about to throw it into the recycling bin. Well, before you do that, watch this video because I am going to show you a ton of ways you can make collage fodder using the leftovers of a magazine. And if you don't have a magazine, there is no reason why you can't use an old book. You'll end up with a very similar result. So without further ado, let's get started. What we're going to do is start off with some of the easy ways that I love. Now, one of the joys of collage fodder is that realism is not the goal. Perfection is not the goal. It's making fun pieces that you can use when you're collaging, creating artworks. You can do with them whatever you like, and you only need very basic tools to get started. So this will be a very beginner-friendly video. If you are well and truly into making fodder, you might still get some fun ideas. And where I like to start is monochrome, black and white. Throwing down pieces in black and white onto colourful backgrounds and things, they stand out, they look fabulous. So one thing I like to do is grab my favourite chisel tip marker. This is just a Sharpie permanent marker with a nice big chisel tip. And normally when I make collage fodder, I would use a whole page. But for the sake of the video and to, make sure we don't not playing with this for the next 3 months, we're going to keep it simple. So I grab a marker. As you can see, a nice big fat chisel tip. Just remember, with this video, I will probably use things that you may not have, or you may have ones that are different. There are no rules. You just use what you have. I'm just hoping this video will make you pick up some of your supplies and actually start making stuff. So my favorite to start with, I grab my chisel tip marker and I do a squiggly line down my page. And then I simply draw the shape of a leaf. So what I'm creating here, it's a stem with some leaves on it. It's very, very simple. Anyone can do this. You do not need artistic talent to do this, because if your leaves are all different, it doesn't matter. But it becomes a very effective piece of collage fodder. There's number one. Another one I like to do, and I'm just going to flip this around a bit, just for my sake, when I write or draw or do anything, I always work on a slant, because that's me. So another really fun way to make some fodder is to simply draw some lines. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be even. This is the joy of collage fodder. The more unrealistic it looks, sometimes the more effective it can look in your artwork. So you just draw little lines. And what you then do is you end up with these little strips that make great layering pieces. Now, of course, if you have coloured markers and you'd like to do something like this, go for it. But I'm starting off this video doing monochrome stuff because it's one of my favourite things to use. Then another thing we can do is simple things like drawing X's. When you cut these out, they're a great little collage fodder piece. Another thing you can do is some circles. Very simple. Another one I love to do is to use my stamps. So I've just got this is a bunch of dots, which we are going to stamp on down. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. Just get marks down on paper. Cut that out. That is a fabulous collage piece. So now let me grab my little plate here and I'll show you some of the fun monochrome pieces that I have made. I might just come in a little bit closer for you. So here are some stems that I've made. Cut them out. I like to leave the white border. It makes things stand out and you actually get to see some of the letters. It just creates a little bit of extra interest. Now, when it comes to stamping, this is one of my favourite stamp sets. I purchased this off Temu ages ago. I do believe you can still get it. But these are one of my favourite things. They look fabulous on a page. But I want you to have a close look at these. It's a stem and then circles. If you don't have this stamp set or anything even remotely closely to it, there is no reason why you couldn't draw some of these yourself. They are so imperfect, it's not funny. This one here, you could do the circles with this sort of marker. It would work. And if you look at this flower, it looks so effective, but it's really just squiggly lines. There is no reason why you couldn't sit in front of the TV at night and draw things like this. And my favourite pen, if I want to do thinner line work, is a Pigma Micron. They're faultless. They just keep going forever, and they create definite lines all the time. I have the whole set. I've got like a 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4, 0, 5. I bought a multi-pack. I love them. So if I was going to be doing some line work like this, I would just use my Micron and draw. But of course, if you have some cool florally, leafy stamp arrangements or anything, it can be jars, bottles, anything you want. Works like a charm. Now, this is another favourite stamp set of mine. This is a set of 6 very basic patterns. When you look at it, again, there's no reason why. This is just all little lines. The lines aren't straight. They're not even. You could draw that yourself if need be. This is literally just squiggles. Okay, to get perfect circles, well, you know what? They don't have to be perfect, but it's just bigger and smaller dots. This one is just lots of lines done in a circle. This is just squiggly lines as well. And then this one, you've got a bit of a half-half arrangement. As I said, I have this stamp set. I love it, but there's no reason why you couldn't recreate those manually. Another thing I love to do is stamp letters and numbers. I have got these beautiful giant numbers. I cut out all even squares and then I stamp down the numbers. I have done some with letters and everything too. In the middle of a page, these stand out. They look absolutely fabulous. Then, now, remember I drew some X's on this sheet. You can cut them out. The other thing I love doing, you just grab black acrylic paint with a dry paintbrush so that you get really good coverage and you just paint some X's. They're uneven. They don't have nice clean ends, but they look absolutely cool as a layering piece. Here are some of the stripy ones, which I showed you before. Use any sort of stripe size. It doesn't matter. But these make great little layering pieces. And of course, then you can do some monochrome flowers. This is just a very simple flower stamp. I use this one a lot. When I'm doing things that I don't want to look that realistic, this sort of has a modern feel to it. It's not what I would call a traditional flower. So it's definitely one of my favourites for doing collage fodder. But who cares? Any flower stamp will do. If you're into paper crafting, you've probably got a flower stamp floating around somewhere. And this one here, it's sort of a flower, but it's almost a bit Mandela-like. Again, love this style for making collage fodder. So there you go. They are my favourite very simple monochrome ones that you can try. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab some watercolor. If you don't have watercolors, you can use acrylic paint and maybe water it down a little bit to get a similar effect. I often just grab this cheapy set. As you can see, it's very well used. And for the price that you pay for these sets, they do this job perfectly. So all I do is wet my brush. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with some greens because I love having leaves. Leaves is one of my favorite types of collage fodder to make. And then all we're going to do, except that one is so empty, it's not really going to work. Might be time to crack out. I've got a new set of these ready to go. And again, we're not going for perfection. We're just getting some paint down on the paper. And your paper may curl up and get a bit wonky. That doesn't matter. You will find as it dries, it will get straighter and straighter. And if you don't like it not being perfectly flat, you can simply place your pages under a heavy book for a day and they will be flat. So all I'm doing here is whacking down paint. I'm not trying to do any particular shape, style. I'm not trying to actually make leaves now. All I'm doing is creating a background. Now, keeping in mind with this, another thing I do like to do is to do exactly the same thing with oranges and browns, so that if you want some autumnal looking leaves, that's a possibility. So, as I said, we're not trying to paint leaves. All we're doing is getting some colour down onto the background. So here is some of my finished pieces that use watercolor. Now, you will see some of these. I might just grab my tweezers here. See how there's very little color? There's just little hints of color here. Now, what I just did before with my watercolors, I'm going to end up with a very similar result like that. If I want bolder colors, I will often grab my better quality watercolors because they are so much more vibrant. Again, also, if you use acrylic paint, you will probably end up with a more vibrant look. It just depends on the sort of style that you might like. Like this leaf here, no reason why I can't use it, but it's only got little scraps of leftover acrylic paint on the edge of a piece of paper, but I'll still use that as collage fodder. And as you can see, I've got my stamps out again for this. Yes, you can hand draw leaves. These are all very simplistic. There's no reason why you can't grab them, but I'm lucky I do have a lot of different stamp sets, so I'm more than happy to put them to good use because it makes it a very quick way of creating collage fodder. This one here, there's a little bit of green. There's even a little bit of blue paint on this. Guess what? Don't care. And then I've got a pencil and I've just drawn some very rough lines on it. We do not need to have extreme artistic talent for these ones. They still look absolutely fabulous on a page. And of course, another thing you can do, for example, this one here, I have used a stamp pad in green. Not worried about getting a perfect stamp. Don't mind that it's a little bit bodgy. To me, the ones that are imperfect actually often look the best when you're using them in your collage work. So if you have stamps, I think with this one, I actually used one of the Distress Oxides as a stamp because I had it right there on my desk. So I did that. I mentioned using autumnal colours. I've made some very dark brown leaves, which are perfect, you know, for late autumn, winter themed things. I got my die cut machine out. This one is a heavy, quite heavy acrylic paint. It's even got a blob of something naughty there, but I don't care. And I have die cut out some of these, all different shades of yellows and browns. This one's even sort of a bit of a tanny colour. It doesn't matter. If you're doing something seasonal, any of these colour shades work perfectly. Now, if you don't have any paint at all, you can still make fodder. For example, this here and these ones here and this one, all of these were made simply by going through my magazine, finding a photo in it that is of a garden. In this case, this was a couple of trees. Well, you cut that bit out and then I die cut them, and I've got this lovely variegated sort of colours for my little foliage pieces, and I didn't even use a single bit of paint. I like doing corals like this. There's another coral here. This one is a painted background. It's far from perfect. Look, you can almost still see white through there. You can see some of the letters from the magazine. Don't care. It gives them, it makes them unique, and it just gives them a vibe that looks fabulous. So this one here, this is a multitude of watercolors. This was acrylic paint. This one here was just watercolor. This one too, again, very imperfect. We're sort of a bit patchy and blotchy. Doesn't matter. The other thing worth keeping sometimes, when you die cut, keep the negative of it. That down on a page can look absolutely fabulous too. So leaves are always handy. Anything planty, there's lots of ways you can get to this stage. Don't panic if you don't have all of them. Start with one and see where you end up. So my next focus is going to be on flowers, or something along those lines. And there's plenty of ways you can add paint to paper to create some lovely flowers. So obviously we can do the watercolor again. You can also just use your brush, a little bit of water and acrylic paints. You will end up with better coverage. That might be to your liking. But there's also plenty of other ways we can add some paint very simply to a piece of magazine page. So for example, let's say we grab some orange. Just for the fun of it, it makes no difference what colour you have. You dabble some down on your page. You grab a big paintbrush and you just paint in stripes. And then just keep going until your paintbrush is really running dry. And then you can, of course, add some more. You might also like to mix your colours up. Don't always have to do the same colours, and you can just pop a bit down on the brush and maybe go the other way. Makes no difference. Whatever's easy, whatever's fun, just get some paint down. And if you decide you want a little thinner, you can always get a dab of water and just do this. If you want to use less paint but still get some good coverage, that's another way of doing it. Simple paintbrush techniques. And all of this, I don't use any of my good quality expensive paints. All of these are El Cheapo ones. It is perfectly acceptable for collage fodder. There is no need to have fancy paints. Like I have a few golden paints, they're stunning, but I don't use them as a rule for collage fodder. Happy to use my cheapy ones. Now, another fun way is to use a brayer if you happen to have one. Of course, I will also mention right now, if you have a gel press plate, by all means use magazine pages on that. You will get some stunning results, but that is, I think, really a video for another time. Gel press printing is so much fun, but it has a lot more involved. These are just simple techniques. Now, sorry, I'm just getting rid of this little bit of crusty stuff that's formed there. So what we're going to do, we're going to blob a little bit of paint on, and we're going to do exactly the same thing, except we're going to use the brayer. Now, brayers can add some good texture to your paper. You end up with these lines unless you really roll it very dry. Then they will disappear. But I actually like that. It makes it a little bit more 3D. I like texture in my work. So you just keep rolling and rolling and going and going. And don't get tempted to throw more paint down unless you've really, truly used it all up. You know, you remember on some of the leaves I had little white patches? That was from brayering. Now, when you are doing gel printing, you always use some paper as to clean up your brayer, and I will always collect those, and it will end up layer upon layer of paint, and you'll end up with all sorts of different colours, but that makes the best collage fodder. So I would leave this like this. If anything, possibly you could add another colour. Another thing I love to do with things like this is to add some splatters, maybe some nice gold splatters or something like that can be really effective too. Again, keeping it simple. You don't need this to be perfectly covered to create some really cool collage fodder. Now, it's very possible that your magazine will have images that you're not interested in, or pages of advertisements where there's plenty of colour, lots of print on there. And, I mean, yes, you could cut this out into a leaf. Looking at this now, that's probably what I would do. But another thing, and a great way to get a lot of coverage if you want to hide ads and stuff like that, and instead of just putting them into the recycling bin, you pop some paint down, you grab an old credit card or a gift card, and you just layer on paint with the card. Now, depending on how much you scrape will determine how much coverage you can get. But can you see basically that image is gone? You can see a little bit of an outline, but you can't really tell what it is. So instead of getting rid of the ads and stuff like that, use an old card, and before you know it, you've got great coverage. What I often do with this, I grab a selection of colours that belong to the same colour family. So, for example, I would use all blues and greens maybe, rather than blue, yellow, purple, because then you end up with mud quite often. But if you stick with the same family and do it in stripes, and you can let the two stripes, actually, I can do a bit of an example here. I've got this light blue, for example. I would put a bit of this down like this. I'm going to do exactly the same thing, and we don't care if the two blend together. You can end up with some really good effects. Just be careful with your colours so that you don't end up with mud. And, for example, blue done like this is often a great way that I will use it to make water. If I'm doing something ocean related, I love all things ocean, you just cut a wavy shape through it, taking in, you know, the different tones of blue. Fabulous collage fodder. And all these pages don't have to go to waste. You can get a similar result with a brayer if you do a few layers. One layer might not work so well, but if you do a few different colours and let it dry in between each one, then you can actually put any colours you like together. So that's just a really good way to use up those supposedly wasted coloured pages. So here's some examples from painted done the way I just showed you. You can start very simply. This is just some pinks, and I have hand drawn some white petals and some little stripes. As you can see, every one of them is a different size. This is far from perfect, but that is a fabulous piece of collage fodder. And if you want to do white, oh, I'm so sorry, just went to grab this. This is my favourite white pen for doing this sort of work. This is a jelly roll. Another thing you can do is to grab a coloured put down a coloured base, then grab your stencil. In this case, I've got a beautiful sort of burgundy colour as my base layer. Then I've grabbed a stencil and I've put a beautiful copper stencil on top of that, and they turned out absolutely beautiful. And then, of course, I have my favourite flower stamp done in all sorts of different ways. This is brayer paper. As you can still see white bits. No problem. This one's multicoloured. We've got a bit of pink and orange and yellow. All good. This one here even has some gold on it. They make the best flowers. And this is another one. This is some purples. It's got a little bit of blue and a copper stripe through it. Don't know anywhere in nature where they exist, but I don't care. I think they make great collage fodder pieces. Another thing you can do, if vintage is your vibe, you can grab a piece of magazine paper and grab your coffee spray. Where's mine gone? Here it is. I have this spray that I make up with a couple of big spoons of instant coffee, the cheapest you can find. Don't need to waste your good coffee on this. And you spritz it on the paper, you let it dry, and have a look at how fabulous this looks when it's dry. You have instant vintage looking paper. And even if vintage is not your vibe, but grunge is your vibe, this is a great way. Start off by spritzing a heap of pages with some coffee. You'll end up with this as your base. Perfect. So I have done a more vintage style stamp for this one, but this was done with some coffee spritzed paper. So that's another easy way. Now, same thing with flowers. I got my die cut machine out again, and this one was a lilac piece of fabric in a magazine. Makes a cute flower. You could also do a little bit of drawing on these if you wanted to make them a bit more dimensional. This here was actually a bedspread. I don't know who in their right mind would want a yellow and white bedspread, but I think it makes a very cute flower. And then here are some very imperfect flowers. This one, he's got a bit of leftover pink that was up there and a bit of yellow and a bit of orange. Can still see some words, but that I love. And this one here, grab a heap of cotton buds. Actually, I'll grab that. I'll show you. This is a really fun tool if you want to do some mark making on paper. Put a bit of acrylic paint down on a plate or piece of paper, anything. Dab it in and do one colour. Let it dry for a little bit, then add another colour, and you can layer all that up and you end up with this fabulous super splotchy sort of paper. This one's got, I think, 3 different colours on it, but it makes a really cool flower in the end, and I don't care if there's some white. And then this one here, this one was from using the credit card technique so that you get a really good coverage. And I've got a few different colours there, but you know, they're all from the same colour family. And you end up with chunky but absolutely gorgeous flowers. And then finally here, this is my mandala sort of flower again. This one's just on a yellow background. And then this one here was an orangey background. And then I grabbed some gold paint and just put on some gold dots. Very simple, very effective, gorgeous piece of collage fodder. Okay, so you've made some painty papers. Here's a few other ideas of things that you can make with them. When you're playing with watercolor, put down blobs instead of, you know, letting all your colors move in together. I've got couple of different shades of green and a blue, and then I've used black acrylic paint to make a few marks, and that one there has 4 different colours. Just don't let them touch each other because otherwise they will run in together, which is fine. For example, like this one, I've got beautiful watercolor patterns on there. But if you want to do the blobby arrangement, try and keep them separate. I've done some, this was a colouring sheet in a magazine that's had a bit of paint treatment. And then there's all sorts of circles you can make. For example, I've used my jelly, look here, proof that it's a magazine page. I've got a few different shades of blue. I've drawn a really rough circle and some white dots with my jelly roll pen. And you can make all these fantastic circles. You don't have to put the dots. You can use black as well, a combination. Some of these, like this, is beautiful copper coloured paint. That was put down with a credit card, and I've even got a fabulous line through that, lovely texture where I re-scraped. You could do black and white. Again, this is watercolours that are sort of blending together but still kept a bit of their own structure. Another one here, this was a dirty brown colour, and I've used a toilet roll holder to put some circles. This was a whole page, and I've just roughly cut out a bit and then gone around and put a bit of white on that one. And, of course, there's another one done with the colouring page. But don't they look effective? And these are great little layering pieces. At the same time, make some labels. If you have a label stamp set, have a look at this gorgeous one. It's orange and a bit of gold and copper. This one is very copper with a tiny bit of blue. And if you don't have a stamp set, you can just die cut out shapes. This one, you probably can't see this in this light, but it has a beautiful blue shimmer. This is one of the credit card ones where I had 2 different shades of blue. You can also grab your pens and create some labels just by making very simple marks. Don't have to have super artistic talent to make basic marks like that. I also did that with this heart. I had punched the heart out, and I added some lines myself just to give it a bit more of a vibe using my pens. Now, if grunge is your thing, using your brayer and using multiple colours, these have turned out absolutely gorgeous. And I've die cut out big numbers, and I've got sort of browns and rusty colours and a bit of olive green. Love how these turned out. But what I discovered also on the back, I was just lucky that the piece of magazine page that I used had these really cool, almost sort of coffee tone shades. I could be very tempted to use them this way or this way, but they're super grunge, those numbers, and I absolutely adore them. This one here, this was a piece of a piece of magazine page that I had dyed with food colouring, a very pale pink, and then I spritzed some coffee on it and stamped out this doily looking image. Great vintage style piece if that's your jam. This one I love. This is a multitude of different colours. That's done with acrylic, and you can make some banners. See, you can then sort of do this, and then you can add this, and then you can add this. And can you see my drift? Layer upon layer. You can have group similar colours, completely clashing. Who cares? And here's some, I like this little arrow die cut. It's a great one to use up for scraps. This was the very end of a page, so instead of throwing it out, I cut out an arrow. This one here has orange and yellow and red underneath. It had a black rose stencil done on top. Again, this was just a leftover scrap. So little arrows, anything like that. And again, you end up with really cool collage fodder. That is so easy to make. You don't need any special skills. You just need a little bit of time and have some fun using what you have. Give it a second lease on life, or go and grab some supplies you haven't used in forever, or maybe never, and go and make some nice, messy, painty fun. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments box below. I would love it if you could give this video a thumbs up and tell me which one of these different types of collage fodder are you going to try very, very soon. Hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.